Welcome to Rich Conversations. This is a podcast where we explore our curiosity. We talk to people all over the world in all different types of disciplines. And today is a very special episode. We are talking with an inmate at a maximum security prison in the western part of the United States. His name is Timothy Hayden, and we've been in contact with each other for like a year and a half. We've just become really close, and we've been having conversations regularly. And we got to the point where it was like, hey, we need to start recording these. We got to share these. This is so awesome and fun. There have been a lot of things behind the scenes to make this episode in particular happen. But I'm excited to have Timothy on, and we are going to use this episode as kind of like an introductory episode, and then in future episodes talk about things that we normally talk about on a regular basis. So I'm so excited to introduce and talk with Timothy Hayden. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, why don't you briefly introduce yourself, Timothy?
Yes, sir. My name is Timothy Hayden. I'm 26 years old. I'm African American. So far, I've been incarcerated for almost 6 years.
Why don't you describe your background, what it was like growing up, and what the area was like?
So I come from two types of backgrounds. I come from a working poor community and a lower middle class community. The first community I mentioned, it's impoverished. Homelessness is prevalent on some streets, is vermin infested, and a high crime rate. My lower middle class community, it's a bit nicer, but I will put the crime rate at a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
So growing up in a working poor community, you see things early on like violence, adultery, people stealing, selling drugs, everything just trying to make $1 just for the next day. Those who do work barely have enough food and rent. There were days where I ate just bread all day, waiting for my dad just to make me noodles for dinner. Sometimes in the morning, I would flick baby roaches out of my cereal and continue to eat while a dead rat behind the stove was on a mousetrap. In my lower middle class neighborhood, it was more decent in appearances, proper meals at night that sincerely had my stomach satisfied. There was no bugs or animals in the house. I had my own bed. Outside of appearances, another big difference I would say is what I had cable. So in my lower middle class community, I had cable, and then at the other house, I was limited to a few channels.
So I think something people want to know that are listening and watching this is what happened that landed you into prison, and how long have you been there again?
So I've been incarcerated for almost 6 years now. When I was 19, I committed strong arm robbery in a pharmacy.
And so that led you to where you are now, right?
That led me to prison where I'm at right now. Was the committing of a robbery, second-degree robbery.
So what's your experience been like in prison so far? And how did the images of prison that you saw before this differ from what you've experienced?
Let me start with the second question, if that's okay. So my experience of prison growing up was horrifying. You think big dudes, you imagine people getting raped left and right, and stabbings going on every day. But in my case, you see certain things, but not every day you see them. My experience thus far has been like turbulent, sometimes repugnant, but valuable all at the same time. For sure, I would say that.
So what would you say, how have you changed personally since being in prison? What were you like when you got in, and then like what would you say you're like now?
So starting off in my incarceration, my mindset, I would say, was juvenile, and I didn't fully process my new circumstance. See, I went from working at Papa John's and going to community college and hanging with friends. Then I transitioned over to something dark and heinous. I was fighting every day with others whose souls were empty and depressing. And I had to, I had realized I was digging myself in a deeper grave. And then I asked myself, how would my family want me to come out of prison?
Mm-hmm.
After some serious reflection, I made a commitment to be better and just make my family proud.
So what's it like daily in prison? Like what does your cell look like? Describe your cell.
Um, Mostly you're in a cell similar to the average person's bathroom with another person, I would say, for 23 hours a day. Um, Daily, though, I read, I write, work out sometimes, watch TV. I had discussions on topics with my cellmate, and I listen to music, find productive ways just to utilize my time and, make time fly.
How important would you say the relationship is with your cellmate?
On a scale of 1 to 10, um, I would say it should at least be at a 9, no lower than an 8, because this is someone that basically you wake up and go to sleep. This is the first person you see in the morning, the last person you're going to see at night. And when you're in a confined space, it's so easy to fall into negative thoughts, and everybody goes through their own situation. So to have a meaningful relationship with your cellmate, it makes times easier,
Yeah.
because both of you guys are away from your loved ones, and the next person, he might have children, where it's like being away from children as a parent, can be detrimental to your well-being. So to have a healthy relationship, with your cellmate or just with anybody, it takes the ease away from being away from society.
Yeah. And I think you've mentioned to me before, it's like your cell's like 6 feet by 12 feet, something like that.
6 by 12. We can say that.
But that's with someone every
Also,
day for like 23 hours a day.
Yes, sir.
And that's the space that you guys have to deal with. So having a good relationship with that person is going to certainly make the experience less difficult. That's for sure.
It makes the experience and just the time being less difficult, less stressful.
Okay. So then what does life look like on a daily basis for an average inmate?
I would say you wake up, you have breakfast, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. Um, After that, some inmates, the mattress they give us, we roll it up, just to show that this is how the program starts. You might clean your cell up, to eradicate any germs or dust that can be lingering in your cell. Some inmates might watch TV, drink some coffee, watch TV, watch the news in the morning. Others might read, they don't like, I wouldn't say they turn on their TVs right away. Some meditate and ponder just on what they want their lives to be once they re-enter back into society. And then if there is yard, which is, we go outside and work out, then those who choose to utilize that time to, stay healthy or stay in shape will go to yard and, do their little workout routines.
What do you do for your workout?
For the most part, push-ups, squats, pull-ups, dips. Here and there, it's been a while, but here and there, I would like run some miles around the track.
Okay. So then breakfast, what are you typically eating for breakfast?
Cereal, oatmeal. It's been a while since I ate pancakes, but for the most part, cereal and oatmeal.
When was the last time you had pancakes? Pancakes are so good.
Uh, um, I would have to say maybe January was the last time I had pancakes.
Okay. Okay. Uh, how are you able to explore your curiosity, challenge your perspective, and stay positive?
How I explore my curiosity is ask questions. I've always been inquisitive, so I ask and learn. Reading as well has helped feed my curiosity, and I would say how I challenge my perspective. I have discussions with older individuals who get exposed to more things than I have. One thing that I'm learning how to stay positive in here is just focusing on what I have at the moment and be grateful, for just be grateful for that, because I realize, there's people with less than me in here and more than likely in society.
Yeah. What you and I talk a lot about books and reading, and we send each other recommendations a lot. Why don't you share what have been some of the most impactful books on your experience so far?
Um, okay, well, I'll say there's been three influential books that I've read within 6 years. And one, I would say I'll start off with the Bible. And two books in the Bible, certainly Ecclesiastics and Proverbs. And those two are more, Ecclesiastics is more of a philosophical type of chapter, and Proverbs is mostly wisdom. The other two books I can say, one is the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then the other one is, I would say, Message to the People by Marcus Garvey.
What's a Message to the People? What's that one about?
So this is more dealing with early times. I want to say maybe going into this is around the early 20th century. And Marcus Garvey was a influential leader amongst African Americans. And he basically taught his philosophies of how Blacks in America should view themselves, or how they should conduct themselves, and try to establish something, for themselves, just to gain respect by others.
And then how long ago was the book written?
I would probably say this was maybe over 50 years, I would say.
Okay. Got it. So people hearing and listening to this, what advice would you share with them if they're feeling lonely, isolated, and unable to take action in their lives? What would you say to them?
For the most part, it comes a time where we all feel lonely. We feel nobody is by our side. We feel hopeless, powerless, isolated, because we think nobody understands us. We have to accept the fact, though, that everybody has to stand on their own 2 feet at some point in time in their lives. Family and friends can't help with every situation. You came into this world by yourself, and you're for sure leaving by yourself. So when you feel lonely and isolated, change that fixed mindset you have of yourself and learn to grow and embrace the ups and downs this world will throw at you. Take time for solitude. Turn off the phone, the TV, and go somewhere quiet with no distractions, and figure out what it is you really want to do with your life and how you can practically do it.
Yeah, elaborate more on solitude.
So a lot of people assume um, loneliness is, well, let's say solitude. You know, you're by yourself, and you might assume that being by yourself is you assume that with loneliness and that everybody's ignoring you, people are neglecting you, and nobody wants to be your friend, maybe, or however you might see it. But solitude is more of a time to where you take the time to enjoy just your company, embrace just you being by yourself so you can really figure out who you are. What have you done since you've been alive? And what are your potentials, to that can make you better in life or help make this world better? Um, how we look at solitude is more like when people choose to meditate, where you want to, you might want the atmosphere quiet just for a moment. And being in solitude, you can find that peaceful time to have self-reflection and just to think about all that's all that has occurred in your life and what can you do to make something better, or if there's any weaknesses, how can you make your weaknesses better?
Would you say that the solitude you're kind of uh, forced to experience while in prison, has it helped you grow as an individual?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, being incarcerated, you're forced with solitude. Those in society, solitude would be more of a choice. And looking back in hindsight, I wish I would have took more of the opportunity of seeking solitude just to reflect on what it is that I'm doing, as I mentioned before, and who am I, and what do I want to become? So in here, when you're being in a cell for 23 hours a day, yeah, you're forced with solitude. You're forced to sit on the bunk and just reflect about life, of the mistakes you made and what could you have done better. And then you start to realize, what it is that you can be. And from right there, I think those are the benefits of solitude right there, is self-reflection. Truly realizing a real deeper meaning of life.
Yeah. Yeah, we've we've talked before about how like there's so many options out here, right? And it's easy to become distracted. Uh that's like the hardest thing to do. People have like such a hard time with solitude. And it's because we've talked about it before. You have I asked what your schedule was like before, and you were like 23 hours a day. I'm in here and I just do what I do. And I said, it sounds like you're like more free than people out here. And
Right.
it's really
Absolutely.
interesting to think about, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. And because a lot of people, I realize as well, when I first graduated high school and I made that decision to go to college to get a degree, it wasn't necessarily my desires of doing that. It was more of a family obligation, you know, um, or an expectation. I
Yeah.
wanted to make my grandmother proud and my uncle proud because of other relatives in my family were doing that. But this is
Yeah.
something necessarily that I didn't really want to do. And to be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I first got out of high school, as a lot of people might feel. You know, you fresh 17, 18, you're not really fully aware of, you know, the reality now that you don't have mommy or daddy to tell you to wake up and get ready for school. And now it's like you're an adult, so you have to make decisions on your own. And a lot of us in certain communities, lower class communities or lower middle class communities, you know, we never really had those sit down talks with guardians or parents, you know, what it is that we want to do in society. So, you know, we kind of run around with our heads cut off like a chicken. And yeah, once in here, I had to really figure out what was my best interest and what did I want to do. And then once I started applying myself to certain focuses and stuff, I started to feel free because I started to realize there were things that really had my interests. When it came to school, it wasn't just to get a degree, but it was to actually learn and educate myself on something that is useful for me, you know, just in life itself. Um, some people in society might feel like, okay, doing something for family members or, you know, this is what expected. It's like you feel you don't have a voice. And when you don't feel like you have a voice, it's kind of like, you know, you're living for others and you're not living for yourself. So in here, it's like once I really figured out what it is that I want to do for myself and I committed to that and I started applying myself, this is where now I started to feel more free and I started to mostly feel alive and just in here, I would say.
Yeah, dude, that's huge. That's like the majority of America, it feels like. And it takes something extreme to change that. You know, for your situation, it's prison. For me, it's like a near death experience on the farm. And you're learning because you want to learn and you're curious and you have like an insatiable hunger for knowledge and truth. And you said question and inquisitive earlier. And it seems often that there's like a lack of that in society, and which is why I always enjoy our correspondence through letters and these conversations, especially lately, because we're able to like connect on that level. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. I've been because of my curiosity, you know, I've read just even more than the books I've named, over 100 books, and just the places that these books have taken me, you know, has been a fascinating journey, you know, and I truly realized that as humans, we have control over ourselves, you know, and just the willpower that we truly have once we tap into it, you know, is phenomenal. Um, once, you know, we really sever ties with distractions or anything that's negative, um, you know, the sky's the limit, basically, you know, just anything is capable. You know, once we truly believe that we can do something or that we can be something, you know, from right there is nothing stopping us.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear you say that. Like when you started doing this, you felt free, and like from what I see on social media, what I overhear on the streets and when I'm working, and like there's like a lot of negativity and like uh a lack of empowerment in oneself. And Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say these things when your physical surroundings are limited, yet your mind isn't. And I think that's a common theme is like your mind. Your mind is the most powerful tool you have. And for most of us, we're not using it as intentionally as we could to help ourselves and others, right?
Yeah. I look at somebody somebody once told me in here that life is 85% mental and 15% physical. And a lot of us look at things just on the surface level of it, and it affects, it affects our well-being, in a way to where majority of us have what psychologists will call a fixed mindset. And we would see what others would want us to see, you know, whether it's their perspective or their version of success or whatever. And we might feel inadequate if we don't reach those standards or that level. If we're not doing as good as our peers or anything, we feel less than. When, I start to self-reflect and really just focus on positivity, or when I read or have conversations with certain individuals, I start to change into a growth mindset and just look at the possibility of, you know, if I take sacrifices or if I ignore like certain illusions and everything that society exudes, then how can, how rich can my life be?
Yeah.
And I asked myself, okay, well, if my neighbor wants a Ferrari, you know, do I need to have that Ferrari in order to feel happy?
Or do you have to get
Or
something
what
better
if
than their Ferrari to be happy?
some people might want to do that? And that's being competitive.
Yeah.
But if I just want something in general to just get me to point A to point B and to take me anywhere my heart desires, shouldn't that make me more happier than just a certain car that can lose value really over time?
Yeah. How important do you think our environments are? Or how much we're influenced by our environments and culture around us?
I would say a very high level. We're influenced by everything, social media, uh, what's on the television, the shows we watch, the movies we see. We're consciously or subconsciously, affected just by everything. What we eat, the what we drink, just conversations that we have on a daily, or the music we listen to, it influences. And you know, but society moves so fast, we don't really realize it. Um, so it's like, yeah, I would say really on a high level, everything around us, from the smallest thing, has a part in influencing, just how we conduct ourselves on a daily.
Yeah. What we consume, we become what we consume, right? Sort of.
No, exactly. We do. You are what you eat.
Yeah. And consumption more than ever now too, because now we're at the point with technology and media where you can literally just consume what you want to consume. You have a choice because with the information revolution and the digital going digital with analog, like TV, you had like 4 channels and that was about it. But now you can literally go down all these rabbit holes of media and consumption, and can be both good and a bad thing. So you have to have the awareness to understand like all these things are designed to get your attention. So it's like putting that ego aside to understand I'm being influenced all the time. Make sure to decipher what I allow in a way, right?
Yeah,
The control.
absolutely. Which I feel like now that's kind of like a big downfall is the ego part. And, it's kind of in a society where, everything is like a competition, it's kind of hard to get rid of the ego. And we find it hard a lot of us find it hard to be selfless. In a lot of situations, we think of self first, which, don't get me wrong, you have your situation. But in order to make life better, we have to think, how can we work together? I like one of these. It was something that I read with the Sacred Hoops, Phil Jackson. And,
yeah, my guy.
He so when he talked about success, and I guess you can kind of say this doesn't have to really apply to basketball, but just in life itself. And he say with success, comes, you have to be awake and aware and in tune with others. And he also talked about having a clear mind and open heart, which those two things, having the clear mind and open heart, seems the hardest for a lot of us, just with everything that goes on in society.
Yeah.
What we expose our mind to on social media or just TV itself, kind of blocks out, or hinders a way for us to really clear our minds and open our hearts.
Yeah. And that's when, as you and I can probably attest to, that's when you like feel the freest. Like when you're learning because you want to learn. If you have like a closed mind or heart, you're not going to pursue that curiosity because your ego is telling you, I know everything there is to know. And you're also worried about the fragility of that sense of self. Whereas when you're open, that's when you're absorbing the most and you're open to the world. And then by doing that, the world kind of opens itself up to you in a way. And it reveals stuff.
Yeah. So, and one thing I learned that's helped me with stop this real quick, Rich. I want to
yeah, do what you gotta do.
yeah. Can you can hear that in the background?
A little bit. It's not too distracting, at least from my hearing.
All right, let me let them finish real quick. It's kind of distracting on my part.
Sure.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah, I'm off the we'll turn off the hotspot. Shit, I ain't gonna lie, I was focused on this. Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
That last, okay, let's go back to let's record back from that last question. Start the last question over, or what you were saying just previously. So then I can then I'll go from there.
Was that the open heart?
Okay, yeah, we were talking about the open mind and open heart, and then you had contributed right there. Then I want to go from right there. That's where I kind of got distracted with what was going on in my background.
Yeah, why don't I kind of repeat what I said, go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think you and I can both attest to, like, you mentioned how you felt free earlier, and that feeling doesn't occur unless you do have like an open heart and open mind, clear mind, where you're not trying to preserve um, an ego or your sense of self in the world. What you want to do is you just have this love and joy, and you're opening yourself to the world to see what is the world, what does it have to offer. And that opening, you just find, is so freeing and so full of joy, and the world reveals itself kind of to you. Whereas if you're closed off to that, you're limiting your opportunities and the possibilities of something even greater. And it's hard to build community and to collaborate with other people if they're closed and unwilling to kind of open themselves to the world and those ideas, right?
absolutely. Um, I used I had a conversation with a young fellow in here the other day, and when you're incarcerated and you kind of feel like it's the same where your back is against the wall
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like everything is against you, and you have a lot of individuals in here who have no support from whether it be family members or friends. And at times, this can be a dark place for a lot of dudes, and you start to resent those who might not be in your corner. Where, just in society, we look at those who we expect to be by our side or expect to be in our lives. Sometimes, the universe have other plans for us. And I'm realizing that a lot of us don't really have or never made agreements with others, of the roles that we want to play in each other's lives. And from right there, once I realized that, okay, with a lot of associates, we never verbally made an agreement, what was the role that I'm gonna play in their lives, or what's the role that they're gonna play in my life.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, I started to open my mind up to just new possibilities. And I started to really realize just every new relationship that I was forming throughout my journey.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of great friends or potential great friends, even family members I was once close with, and started to establish new meaningful relationships with people I thought I would never run into. And I just started to embrace, what the future was throwing at me, and took all those mistakes I made in the past as lessons.
Mm.
And now in the future, or I would say, what's going on in my life now, every mistake that I make moving forward, or every loss that I'm going to suffer moving forward, I look at it as a lesson, for something later.
Yeah.
And from right there, I remind myself and I stay open minded to that, but I also stay grateful just for what I have. The fact that I still have good health, I still have support from family members and friends. And, I'm not going without in life.
Yeah.
That'd be like the best way I can put it. And from right there, just reminding myself and realizing that this is where, I'm starting to find peace within myself.
Now, you've been kind of on this journey now, and you have this perspective now. What was it like for you when you were like first in prison and you didn't have this kind of mindset? Were there like some really low moments where that got really dark for you? And then, if so, like how did you how did you start? Like I think that's the biggest challenge that people have, is like they want this mindset that you have and that you've cultivated, but how? What are the first steps? And if you could share like a dark moment and how you kind of took steps to proceed forward. You're laughing. I know you got something, I'm sure. How could you not, right? I mean,
Nah, I do. It's prison. It's prison. So everybody, no matter who you are in prison, everybody goes through a dark time, because you're entering into an atmosphere that's abnormal. That the average person in society will view as unusual. So coming into this experience, my main focus was just to get out as soon as possible and continue, the life I was living that got me basically led up to prison. So
you were just focused on getting out so you could just get back to life.
Basically just, go back to school and hang out with friends. And, now it's like, and continue on working. Just not, I assume, just not commit another robbery, but I didn't fully have a full plan to what I really wanted to do. And I still didn't understand what was it that I truly wanted to do with myself. But I would say I was, this was 2018 and I was 22 at the time. So in prison, you kind of, I still had the mindset of, dudes getting stabbed every day, possibly, getting raped. So I had what people in here call a prison shank, which is a knife. Mm-hmm. And I got caught with this knife and I got sent to a place called the Hole. Now the Hole is where it's like, there's no watching TV. There's no listening to music like that. You're strictly just writing and reading. And I would do, puzzles here and there. But at this time, I was really depressed. And that was when I asked myself, okay, if I was to come home right now, how would my family want me to be conducting myself? And I kind of had a cellmate at the time who helped me realize, just my possibilities of what I can be doing with myself in here that can, better me for when I re-enter society. So I've done some self-reflection, and I asked myself, what is it that I truly like? And then I just started journaling. And from right there, one thing led to another. I started to just write poetry. And then from poetry, it led more to philosophical thinking. And then, an idea just popped up in my head. Hey, why not write a book? You've been writing for 30 days so far. You have over 30 pages of just, writing down your thoughts or writing down poems. Why not write a book? If it's good, who knows? It could be good or bad, but just give it a try. It's something you've never done before. Try it out. What's the worst that can happen? And then, from right there, I just say, why not try something new? Start to break old habits that I have, and what can be some new habits that can lead me on a productive path. And then from right there, once I figured all that out, I just stayed focused on that.
Yeah, it seems like too, like you're confronted in that moment too, of like, if I'm making this change, I'm not waiting years to do it. I have to do it right now. There's nothing else to do. I have to do it now, right? So then you're prepared when you do leave, right?
So it's an older dude told me here, what you're doing here is what you're gonna do out there. A lot of dudes, as I said before, they a lot of things they look forward to is getting out of prison and doing the same thing that landed them in prison. Basically, we would say, all you wanted was just some fresh, free air,
Yeah.
and then you wanted to come right back. Um, Me personally, I look at the disappointment that I've caused just with families and friends being in here. And, when you really do some self-reflecting and you really do some thinking, you realize the hurt you cause on certain people because of the roles you played in their lives. And then you start to ask yourself, okay, well, the responsibilities you can take on when you come back to society. And that's what make you an asset to your community or to your family members. And, if you don't think about those stuff in here and you don't start to apply practical steps in here, then I know for sure an individual won't do it when they get out there. They'll just go back. It's a saying that if you have no vision for the future, then you'll resort back to what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't plan for your future now, then they can let you out the next day and you'll just resort back to what you know.
Yeah. We're getting close to time here on wrapping up, but I want to talk a few more questions. Who would you say is the most interesting person you've met in prison so far? What were they like?
Honestly, I met a lot of interesting people who contribute to my growth. So it would be hard and unfair to single one person out because at least more than 5 people have played important roles in my life. Some of them taught me things about wealth or finances. Others had me look into a deeper meaning of just religion or history.
Mm-hmm.
I had a cellie who helped me just look into a deeper perspective of a man and, how a man has obligations and responsibilities and duties to, his family and his communities. Another one, helped me realize just the important role of working, and being able to provide and protect, your family. So I can't really single out one interesting person, but I would say, I've met at least over 5 individuals who have been interested and who have really played a substantial role in my life.
Yeah, that's fair and great to hear that there's more than one, of course. Yeah. The last question I have for you for today, what's something you're curious about recently? It's a question I love asking on the podcast. What are you curious about recently?
I'm mostly curious about my family's perspective when I come home.
Really?
Yeah, because they once knew me as this little boy who was quiet and at the same time goofy. But now they get to see a whole new side of a mature version of me and someone who's more focused on their vision. Mm-hmm. And also as well, I'm more in charge of, my daily life. I'm not letting others or others' opinions dictate, how I should be conducting myself. At this point, I know right from wrong. I mean, I've been knew right from wrong, but now I look at it like, I'm more of a man than I was before I landed in prison.
Yeah.
They say 18, you're legally grown in society, but truthfully, I still felt as I was a teenager. 19 coming in, I still, like I said, I had the juvenile mindset. So I'm just curious now just to see, my family's perspective of me now.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting too.
Yeah.
Oh,
It really is.
Well, thanks for coming on today. This has been great. Always love talking with you. Yeah, we got to have more of these coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what does the rest of your day look like? What are you going to do?
For the most part, I'm going to read more of this I Ching for beginners. Also get into a little bit of the Phil Jackson Sacred Hoops.
Yeah.
I'll probably do, still practice on drawing, try to draw a little bit.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Read some of the I Ching for us before we head out.
Oh,
you were reading it earlier. We had some technical difficulties that came up that didn't come up when we practiced the technology aspect of this before. So, here we go.
Okay, so we were discussing resolving conflict.
Yes,
this is
because we had a conflict with technology. Yeah.
So the I Ching wants us to know that the fact that the sky and sea are permanently divided reminds the empowered person that conflict is inevitable. The key words the I Ching wants us to be aware of are conflict, disagreement, clashes, combat, disputes, opposition, differences, struggles, incompatibility, and compromise. So this is what the I Ching encourages you to do. Standing up for what you feel is right, developing common ground, pursuing the trust of others, objectively evaluating your own position, understanding your own motives, keeping a cool head, calling for aberration, defining how the situation began. And then there's cautions against fighting for a cause you don't believe in, moving forward when you know you're in the wrong, believing that might makes right, favoring aggression over agreement, treating the ideas and values of others with disrespect. So now there's thought questions as well that the I Ching wants us to think about. And one of them is, how certain am I that my position is justified? How can I know for sure? What common grounds can I establish with those who oppose me? What am I willing to give up in a compromise? And then what neutral party can help settle this conflict? So there's guide to changing lines as well. And on the first line, it says here, consider what you may be doing to perpetrate this conflict. While everything will be fine in the long run, prepare in the short term for a minor skirmish. On the second line, it says, when you're outgunned and outmaneuvered, engaging in battle invites disaster. Rather than be drawn into an unequal conflict, consider the value of a strategic retreat.
So what kind of book is this?
This is more of an ancient oracle.
Okay.
Say, Chinese philosophy.
Yeah.
So this is mind, body, and spirit, Chinese philosophy.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for sharing your experience on the podcast today.
Oh, yes, sir. Anytime. I appreciate you taking the time, and for the viewers taking their time to listen.
Yeah. Thanks again.